The car always arrived at exactly 2:17 a.m. Not around, not close, exactly. I noticed that detail before I noticed anything else, before the way the headlights cut through the trees, before the sound of tires on gravel, before the feeling that the night had just leaned a little closer to the building. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Remote gas stations attract habits. Truckers run on schedules. People repeat themselves when there's nothing around to interrupt them. That's what I told myself during my first week working nights. The station sat alone on a stretch of highway that didn't feel meant for stopping. No nearby town, no houses, just road, forest, and the darkness that felt old enough to remember things. I was 34 and recently broke enough to accept a job no one else wanted. Night shift, one clerk, 8 hours of quiet. The building was small, 2 pumps outside, a single aisle inside, coffee that tasted burned no matter how fresh it was. A bell above the door that rang even when the wind pushed it just right. The first night the car came, I barely looked up. I heard it before I saw it. Engine low, steady, careful. No radio, no hesitation. The headlights swept across the pumps and stopped. 2:17. The man stepped out slowly. He wore dark clothes that didn't reflect the light properly, like they absorbed it instead. He didn't stretch, didn't glance around. Just walked straight in, eyes fixed somewhere below my face. The bell rang. He bought the same thing every night after that. 1 bottle of water, 1 pack of matches, cash, always exact. He never spoke unless I spoke first. Even then, his answers were minimal. A nod, a quiet yes, sometimes nothing at all. When I tried to look at his face directly, my eyes slid away without effort, like my brain refused to hold on to the details. The cameras never showed him clearly. That was the second thing I noticed. On the monitors behind the counter, the footage glitched whenever he stood at the register. His body appeared, shape, movement, but his face was always blurred, smeared by shadow or static. I told myself it was old equipment. I told myself a lot of things. By the 5th night, I started waiting for him. By the 7th, I checked the clock every few minutes after 2. At 2:17, the headlights came again. And every time he left, the smell followed. Burned rubber, hot metal, something sharp underneath it, like plastic that had been melted too fast. I cleaned the counter after he left, but the smell stayed in my nose long after the door closed. On the 10th night, as he turned to leave, I heard him breathe. It sounded wrong, not labored, not sick, just hollow, like air moving through something that had already burned out. After the 10th night, I stopped pretending the pattern didn't matter. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell, really. The nearest town was almost an hour away, and the people who passed through this stretch of highway didn't linger long enough to notice patterns. They came, filled their tanks, and disappeared back into the dark. So did I, at least during the day. At night, the station felt sealed off from the rest of the world. The man's car never changed. Same dark sedan. Same dull paint that didn't quite reflect the overhead lights. No visible damage. No license plate I could clearly read. The engine always idled too quietly, like it was trying not to be heard. At 2:16, I would feel it coming. Not hear it. Feel it. The forest beyond the pumps would go still. No insects. No distant wind. Even the hum of the station's fluorescent lights seemed to soften, like the building was holding its breath. Then the headlights appeared. 2:17. One night, I tried, not speaking at all. I rang up the water and matches silently and held out my hand. He placed the bills on the counter, fingers never quite touching mine. Up close, I noticed something new. His hands were clean, too clean. No dirt, no oil, no calluses. Not the hands of someone who drove long distances or worked outdoors. They looked preserved, like they'd been kept away from the world. When I handed him the change, our fingers brushed. The cold shocked me, not the sharp cold of winter air. This was deeper, like touching something that hadn't held warmth in a very long time. My hand tingled after he pulled away, numb for several seconds. He didn't react. As he turned to leave, I noticed the smell again, stronger this time. Burned rubber, yes, but also scorched fabric. Hair, something organic that made my stomach tighten. I watched him through the glass as he walked back to the car. He never looked behind him. The cameras caught more than usual that night. When I reviewed the footage later, I saw that while he stood at the counter, the reflection in the window behind him didn't line up. The shape was there, but it lagged slightly, like it was remembering where to be. At 2:19, after he drove away, the pumps alarmed. No car, no movement, just the system alerting me that a pump had been lifted and replaced. When I checked the log, it showed a transaction at pump 2. Fuel dispensed, 0.0 gallons. I didn't sleep after that shift. The next night, I searched the station's old paperwork, maintenance logs, incident reports, anything that explained why this place felt so heavy after 2 in the morning. I found one report, yellowed and folded, buried beneath years of receipts. Vehicle fire, no survivors. The date was over 20 years old. Location, this station. Time, 2:17 a.m. I didn't read the report all at once. I skimmed it at first, then folded it back into the drawer like I hadn't seen it. Some instinct told me that knowing too much, too quickly, would only make the nights heavier. Like once the idea settled in fully, the station would notice. But the time stayed with me. 2:17 a.m. Not when the fire was reported, not when emergency services arrived. Time of ignition? The man hadn't crashed. The report made that clear. His car had been parked at pump 2, engine running, door open. Witness statements mentioned shouting. One voice, then silence. The attending clerk was questioned. No charges filed. No wrongdoing proven. I found his name near the bottom of the page. It wasn't Daniel. It was someone else. Someone who had worked the night shift before me. Someone who had been temporarily reassigned a month later and never came back. The file ended there. That night, the station felt different before midnight. Not quieter. More attentive. Every sound carried weight. The hum of the lights, the click of the refrigerator door, my own breathing behind the counter. I kept glancing toward pump 2, half expecting to see flames licking the concrete. At 2:12, the air changed. The smell came early. Burned rubber, hot oil. That same sharp, melted edge that made the back of my throat tighten. I swallowed and forced myself to keep standing where I was. At 2:17, the car arrived. Same headlights, same careful stop. But this time, the engine stayed running. He didn't get out right away. I watched through the glass as he sat there, hands on the wheel, head angled slightly downward. For a moment, I thought he might finally look at me. He didn't. When he stepped inside, the bell rang. and then kept ringing, vibrating longer than it should have, as if something had leaned against it. Up close, his clothes looked darker. Not dirty, not burned, just drained. Like colour had been pulled out of them over time. He set the water and matches on the counter. I didn't ring them up. I said his name instead. Daniel. He froze. Not completely, just enough to notice. His shoulders stiffened. The smell intensified, rolling off him in waves. Slowly, he lifted his head. For the first time, he looked directly at me. There was no anger in his expression, no accusation, just recognition. Like I had finally said the correct word. "You're early," he said. His voice sounded scorched, not rough, thinned, like it had been scraped hollow. I asked him what he wanted. He glanced past me, toward the back room, toward the wall where old photos hung, previous clerks, faded and yellowed. His eyes lingered there longer than necessary. "I come here every night," he said quietly. "Someone always stays." The cameras flickered behind me. He stepped closer to the counter than he ever had before. "And now," he continued, "it's almost your turn." The lights dimmed. Outside, pump 2 clicked on by itself. After that night, I stopped counting the hours. Time at the station lost its shape. The clock above the register still moved, but it felt decorative. Something meant to reassure customers, not reflect reality. The only time that mattered anymore was 2:17. Everything before it felt like waiting. Everything after it felt borrowed. I started feeling watched long before he arrived. Not from the road, from the pumps, from the dark space just beyond the reach of the canopy lights, where the forest pressed close enough that the trees looked like they were leaning in. Some nights, I caught myself staring at pump 2, convinced I'd see heat rippling in the air or smoke crawling up from the concrete. I never did, but the smell came earlier each night. By the time the clock read 2:05, my eyes burned and my throat tightened, like I'd been standing too close to something smoldering. The air felt dry and heavy, as if it had already been used up once before. I tried leaving early. On my 14th night, I shut down the register at 1:50 and grabbed my jacket. I didn't tell my supervisor. I didn't leave a note. I just wanted distance, miles of it, between me and that stretch of road. The door wouldn't open, not locked, not jammed. It just resisted, like pushing against something soft but unyielding. I pressed harder until my shoulder ached, then stepped back, breathing fast. The clock ticked. 2:17. The headlights appeared. The car pulled in faster than usual, gravel popping under the tires. He got out immediately this time, not bothering to close the door behind him. The engine stayed on, idling rougher than I'd ever heard it. He didn't go to the counter. He walked behind it. I backed away, heart hammering, my spine hitting the shelves of snacks and oil bottles. Up close, the smell was overwhelming. Burned upholstery, fuel, something charred that felt wrong to breathe in. "You should have helped," he said quietly. His hands closed around my arm. The cold was instant and deep, like my skin had been pressed against metal in winter. I tried to pull free, but his grip tightened. Not aggressive, just certain. He started dragging me toward the door, toward the car. I saw it clearly now. The interior blackened, the seats warped, the dashboard melted into a shape that barely resembled anything functional. Heat shimmered inside it, though there were no flames. "I stayed," he said. "Now, You will too. I grabbed the nearest thing I could reach, the metal emergency shut-off handle mounted by the door. I yanked it down with everything I had. The pump screamed. Lights flared. Alarms wailed. For the first time, he reacted. His grip loosened just enough. I twisted free and ran. I didn't grab my keys from the counter. I didn't look back. I burst into the night, lungs burning, and dove into my car. Gravel sprayed as I floored it, headlights slicing into the dark. In the mirror, I saw the station one. Last time, pump 2 was burning, not wildly, controlled, like a signal. I didn't slow down until the road curved enough that the station disappeared behind the trees. Even then, my foot hovered over the gas, ready to press harder. I kept expecting the engine to stall, kept expecting the headlights to dim, kept expecting to feel that cold again, hands on my arm, certain and patient. None of that happened. The road stayed empty. The forest rushed past on both sides, a solid wall of black broken only by my headlights. I drove for nearly an hour before I realized my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. I pulled over once, just once. I stepped out of the car and bent forward, hands on my knees, breathing in the cool night air until the smell finally faded from my nose. Burned rubber, melted plastic, that sharp, clinging trace of heat. It was gone. When I checked the time, my stomach dropped. 2:17 a.m. Nothing happened. No headlights, no engine, no sense of being watched. That was when I knew I had made it far. Enough. I never went back to that job. I didn't call. I didn't explain. I didn't even collect my last paycheck. A week later, I saw the station listed online, hiring for a night clerk. No details, no contact name, just a number. I blocked it without calling. Months passed, then a year. I took a different night job in a different state. A place with traffic, noise, people who came and went without repeating themselves. Still, some habits stayed with me. I don't work alone anymore. I don't stay past closing. And I never watch the clock after 2. Once, late at night, I passed a roadside station that looked too familiar. Same layout, same lonely stretch of highway. For a moment, my chest tightened, and I nearly checked the time. I didn't. I kept driving. Somewhere out there, I know the car still arrives. Not for fuel, not for water or matches. It comes looking for someone who hesitates, someone who stays. And every night, at exactly 2:17, the road remembers who didn't walk away.